And so one of my big whys is I want to be a great example for my kids. When I don't work out, I'm like, you have to go tell your kids why. You're going to have to tell them why you didn't do it. So for instance, when I did one of my first long fasts, I did a 7-day fast. My oldest asked me, he was like, hey, I'm going to make burger steak. You want one? And I was like, nah, buddy, I'm fasting. And he goes, how long? And I was like, till Thursday. And he goes, wow. It was Monday. And he was like, wow. He was like, that sounds really hard. And I'm like, yeah. And he goes, but that makes sense because you like to do hard things. And I was like, that's right, buddy. And I turned and I walked in my room and I made the decision. I was like, I will die before I eat.
Dr. Chalmers, welcome to the show. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you guys doing?
Doing so good. All right. So I want to dive on into this thing, and I want to talk about your journey into holistic wellness. Okay. First of all, tell me about holistic wellness and what inspired you to focus on mindset as a crucial part of health.
So when we talk about holistic stuff, we're talking about, the entire person. So we'll bring people in and we'll be like, oh, you have, low B vitamins, you have a parasitic infection, you've got low hormones, we'll fix all that stuff. But if we're really working on the entire person, one of the things that would obviously my specialty in neurology, we focused on was stress. And we talk about stress and what stress does to the body. One of the most important things you can do is change the way that we think and the way that we focus our attentions on the day. There's all sorts of research on if you shift from being a negative outlook on life to a more positive, more optimistic outlook, things start working for you in your benefit because you start seeing the positives instead of seeing the negatives. When you see the positives, you can start walking into the positives and things get better.
Hold up. That is so good. That is so good. Hold on. That is so good. Let me tell you, I'm going to give you a mic drop for that. Okay. It literally reminds me of a conversation I was having this morning. Okay. I was having a conversation with a woman this morning, and she's a single mom, and she was needing to depend on her aunt to pick up her child and things like that. And she said a comment about, I hate having to depend on people. Right. And I said, hold on, wait, let's reframe that. Like, what about the gratitude of being able to depend on people? I said, think about the word depend. I said, hold on, think about the word depend. I said, it means dependable, reliable, trustworthy. I started saying, like, and I said, think about God, right? We rely on God. God is dependable. He's trustworthy, right? I started saying all these things, and it totally flipped her mindset about like having to depend on someone to a positive mindset. And it, like, she started to see that. And anyway, I love, it's all about perception, right? Half empty or half full.
Well, the other part of that is that when you start letting her focus on the fact that the person she's relying on, she needs to be grateful for, she starts going to that person and being like, hey, thank you so much for this. And so she starts feeding positivity back into the person. And so that strengthens that relationship, making the person more dependable as well. So again, everything gets better when we start reframing things in a positive light. So for instance, we talk about diet. If people talk about cheat days, I won't let people use the term cheat day when they work with me because here's the thing, frame cheating in a positive light. The other team cheats, the other politicians cheat, your spouse cheats on you. None of that creates positivity. But if I go, look, if you're really good on your diet for a week, for 10 days, whatever, and then you want to go off and do something, you've earned it. It's a reward. So we need to reframe these as reward days because you've earned them. And the crazy thing about this is that when people would tell me what they'd have for their cheat days, they'd be like, I ate the whole bag of Oreos. And I'm like, all right, same guy, when we move it to reward days, nothing else changes. And he's like, I ate a bunch of sushi. And he's like, yeah, I know it's not on my diet, but it was, oh my gosh, it was so good. And so we go from bag of Oreos to sushi. Like, as far as how bad those are for you, unbelievable difference. But just because he was like, that's one of the major things we saw when we changed it to a positive function was that everything about that individual started getting better.
Yeah, I see that. Okay, so just changing the lens, the perception from cheat day to reward day. Okay, listen, I have made a massive change in my life over the last year with my routines and working out and eating healthy. And have you ever heard of Factor?
Is that the one that where they ship you the food?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I started that, okay, for my diet, right? And one of the things I like about it is it's portioned. It's supposed to be healthy for you, blah blah blah, right? It's chef prepared. They're actually really good. They taste amazing. Um, but I guess some people have raised concerns. They've mentioned, well, does it come in like a plastic container and stuff like that? And you're microwaving it in a plastic container. It is still fresh food. Do you have any thoughts on that, or what are your thoughts on that? Because you are microwaving it in plastic. So does that hurt me? Does that take away all the health benefits?
It doesn't take away all the health benefits. The first thing, I'm not a big fan of microwaves. So what we use is we use far infrared, toaster ovens or far infrared generators for heat. That's typically the big thing. Microwaves have a lot of things. We break down to the quantum function, what it actually does to food. Like, I'm not a big fan of microwaves. And typically microwave safe plastics, you're not going to get a lot of bleed off of. But when a lot of plastics get hot, they start leaching chemicals into your food. So using, if you're going to do this at home, heat things in a glass container or on a plate or something like that. That's going to be a little better for you. But a lot of these things, when we start breaking down, like, people get two, that's actually perfect. It's 1% bad, so I'm not going to eat it. Like, the oatmeal has phytic acid, so I'm never going to eat oatmeal again. You're going to run out of everything to eat if it has to be perfect. So take those things out of the plastic, put it in a glass container, heat it in a farm to red or a toaster oven thing. That's going to be a little bit better for you. But a lot of that stuff is really pretty solid, because the biggest problem we get into is how much. People ask all the time, like, what's the best diet? And I'm like, if I have to pick one, I'm going to pick keto for, the United States. And the reason I say that is because it's a low glycemic. We just take the sugars down. We take the processing down. We take the chemical trash out of the food. We really reduce that. Not everybody needs to be keto, but we do need to reduce all those chemicals that we're eating.
So I don't even know. I'm going to tell you right now. You say keto, I don't even know what the heck that is. So what is a keto diet?
So
I've heard the term, right? I just don't know. I've never, I'm not a big, like, that's actually why I love this factor thing, is because I don't have to think about it. Yeah. Right. I'm like, it just shows up and I'm like, bing, and I know it's healthy for me and I know it's portioned and I know I'm not going to overeat because it's like a little, small, it's a portioned, right? So, yeah. But anyways, I don't know what the heck a keto diet is from a whatever diet. What's a keto diet?
So technically a keto diet is where you're not consuming any carbohydrates and your body is having to make ketones to run on. And so it's really strict. It's really tight, really hard to get into.
So no bread, no donuts, no pasta.
So it's anything that causes an insulin response. So you can have pizza and donuts and you can have these things, but they have to be specifically made for keto. So they don't affect your insulin function. So like a lot of times what people do is I'm like, bring me your 10 favorite foods and I'll build you a diet out of it. And so you just change the chemistry of it. But at ketos, you're actually producing ketones. I operate what's called a fat oxidizing state, where I take collagen to produce extra sugar for my body, but my body's running on fat the whole day. So there's upsides to that one. One, my breath doesn't stink. Two, my brain has that to function on. I don't damage any muscle tissue because your blood has to have sugar. Everything in your body can run on ketones or fat or sugars, except for your blood. Your blood can only run on sugar. And this is the problem we get into with like Ozempic. People who don't do Ozempic properly, they lose a lot of muscle tissue because your muscles will be broken down into amino acids. Your liver turns them into sugar through gluconeogenesis to feed your blood. Well, if you don't consume enough things, any carbohydrates or anything to create the sugar for your blood, your body has to make it. And so that's one of the grounds we get into is if we don't recognize what all's going on, you're going to have some issues there. But a lot of times if you're eating a keto diet, you're eating high protein, and the protein is going to be digested and turned into sugar, so you're going to be fine. But that's basically what the keto is. You're producing ketones for your body to run on instead of using carbohydrates.
Do you follow, it's Gary Brecka. Yeah, Gary Brecka. Do you see his stuff? You follow him at all? What are your thoughts on his, 10X health system and all of that?
So a lot of the stuff he does is on point. The genetic functions, the genetic testing on point. Like we need to get our genetics tested. There's a lot of stuff we can do with that. There's, and I'd have to ask him why he came out. So the ad that I see all the time for the perfect aminos is that his statement that 82% of whey protein turns to sugar and that makes you fat. I don't see that ever happening. So what happens when you consume a protein is that it will be digested into amino acids, and your body will use it to create sugar. But 82% it usually only uses alanine and aspartate. So I don't know where he's getting that. And I also don't. I've had this discussion with lots of bodybuilders and stuff like that. Your body has to take a protein, digest it to amino acids, to the liver, gluconeogenesis, then it puts the sugar into the blood. You have to have so much sugar in the blood at once that it creates an insulin response, pushes it all into the muscle tissues, and then back to the liver to be created into fat. I don't see the body being that inefficient. And so I don't think the protein's going to turn into fat. So that's the question I have about what he said on that one thing. But a lot of the stuff he's talking about is on point. Like a lot of the stuff, the weird stuff he talks about, the vibrational stuff, the grounding stuff, 100% on point. Like I've seen the stuff I've seen so far, he's pretty good. I'd say, no one can be right on everything. And I tell you that he's a great guy to listen to because he's got a lot of really good information.
Yeah, I've really, I got to hear him speak at the 10X Growth Conference. And I did the genetics test and found out, what I guess my genetic mutations are and blah, blah, blah. And listen, a lot of this stuff's so over my head. I mean, it's like, to me, it's like rocket science, like all this stuff. And then I get this report and it tells me all these different things. And it's like, I need somebody to break this stuff down to me in like third grade language, and just tell me what I need. Okay. Like here's the supplements you need to fill in the gap of your deficiency. Like here's where you're deficient. Here's what you need. Right. Cause that's kind of his whole model is through the genetics tests. It tells you where you're deficient and then you supplement for that, and you supplement for that to fill in the gaps. And I'm like, but then they give you this big report and all this kind of stuff that's hard to understand it all. And it's like, can you not just tell me what I need? I don't care how the refrigerator works. I just want to open it up and get cold milk. Okay. I don't care how it works, but some people care how it works. To me, just tell me what I need. What I'm saying?
Funny here. I always tell people, like, you're always going to get too much information when you can work with us. Because again, like I always tell people, like, my job isn't to tell you what to do. I'll give you recommendations, but my job is to tell you your options. And so what we'll do with those type of things, the great thing about what those type of seminars is you get all this information and you're like, okay, I now know that I need to do something. And knowing you need to do something is 1,000 times better than not knowing. But then what you have to do with that next step is, well, what am I going to do? And so that's, what we're trying to do is we're trying to build kind of a community of, hey, this is how this is working. Because if I'm the 10 and you're a 2, like if I've got 3 or 4 guys who are in our community who are a 3 or 4, they started 2 months ago, they're going to be beneficial helping you be like, hey, when I started, this is how it was. And so this is how we're putting it together. So that walking people through it.
That's so good. I'm gonna give you another mic drop for that, because to give you to paint a picture here, I went to that 10X Growth Conference, saw him speak, right? And I'll be honest with you, I'm 37, didn't really think anything about anything. I don't, not really thinking about my health that much. But then I hear this guy speak and he's bringing some awareness. And now I look back and I go, okay, look at where you were, look at where you are. I've lost some weight. I'm like probably in the best physical shape that I've been in my whole entire life. I work out every morning. I've got an ice bath. I built an ice bath in my house, like at my house. So I do an ice bath every morning, like all these different things. I'm starting to put the, the Himalayan sea salt in my water so I can get better hydration and like all this stuff that I'm like, well, it's so to your point, he just brought awareness, right, to me. And from that point, I've started to slowly take different action steps that are putting me in a better position. So that's great.
Well, that's the big thing was I wanted to start a community. So with our Facebook group and with our online stuff, and I do all calls with our team, and it's just going, hey, where are you guys having issues? Like, what questions you guys have? And the great thing is that like our first one, when we started talking, people would ask questions. They're like, hey, how are you guys have done this coffee enema thing? Like, I'm AT on this one. Everyone was like, oh, you've got to just do it. Like, get over it.
Coffee enema?
Oh, yeah.
What?
Yeah. So, yeah.
That doesn't even sound attractive. Hold on, what?
So it's one of the coolest things in the world, because very rarely do you get the cheapest, fastest, and best option all in the same one. The downside is you got to do an enema. But the enemas clean the liver and help clear everything out more than anything else that we got. It'll kill parasites like crazy. We have probably 90% of the people who come see us have a parasitic infection. And the fastest, cheapest way to get rid of it is with coffee enema. But it also will
Coffee
clean
enema.
out the liver. Oh, yeah.
So you're saying it's whoop and it's a whoosh with coffee?
Yep.
It's a swoosh swoosh. It's a wow.
Yeah,
I've never heard about that in my life. Wow.
Really?
Why coffee? Why coffee?
So the oils that are in coffee help break it hard, congealed bile salts. So have you ever heard of gallstones? Gallstones?
No.
Like gallbladder gallstones?
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, I've heard of what's the other one? Maybe it's the same one. What's the one that you pee out?
Oh, the kidney stones.
Kidney stones. Yeah. I've heard of that.
Well, so gallstones are in the liver, in the common bile duct. If you can gallbladder out, if you have those sort of things, that's what you usually do. Those are actually formed in the liver. So they're just placed in the gallbladder. And so what ends up happening is that as you lose, for instance, methylated B6, you talk about the test that Gary Brecka does. If you have MTHFR and you're losing methylated B6, your bile salts will start to congeal, and we start having more gallstones stuff. You don't emulsify fats very well. The oils from the coffee help loosen and break that stuff up and flush it out. So the cool thing is that the cleaner we get our liver, because the liver's job is to clean the blood and the lymph, and then the blood and the lymph go clean the whole rest of the body. So when people have acne issues, or they have fine lines and wrinkles, or they have some skin issues, we're like, look, if we clean your liver, that'll help. And so we give these guys coffee enemas, teenagers, adults, whatever, and they start doing these coffee enemas, and it starts cleaning up their skin. And they're like, oh, that's fantastic. I'm like, well, here's the thing you should notice on that. If your liver was having trouble, like, it's still detoxing, but it's not keeping up with the speed at which you're putting toxins in. We need to evaluate what you're eating, the supplements you're taking, that type of stuff, because obviously we're putting more toxins in than we can push out without help. Or you can just take the coffee enemas. I like quality of life. I'm like, everything I do in my life is there on purpose. So I'll just do the coffee enemas as well.
Wow.
So, yeah.
That's crazy. I never heard about that. I'm gonna have to look into that, man. Like, see what's up with that. Like, come on now. Okay, this is good.
That's why I wanted to start the community, because there's things that I've known for a decade, but you just found out today. And so if we're all in this community talking about stuff, we have some type of guidance. You have people you can ask questions to. That's kind of why I wanted to start the whole community of, well, let's talk about this stuff, because the problem we get into is that I look at the mental piece as like a Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? So if you're starving, you're not going to be working on your best mental self. You're going to be looking for food. If you're tired all the time, if you're miserable, if you're sore, if your body is not in the right spot, we got to fix your body. Then we can start working on the mind stuff. And the funny thing is that a lot of the mind stuff keeps your body from getting where it needs to go. If you're really stressed out, it's going to keep your gut shut off. If your gut shut off, you can't make serotonin to help with your stress. So it's a cycle where you got to kind of like, I'm going to fix the body, then we're going to look in the mind to decrease the problems the body's created.
Well, let's dive into this, because this is real important. Because there's been times, like I said, I'm doing my workout, I'm pretty consistent, but you know what? There are days, okay, we're not going to call them cheat days, okay, but let's just say I've noticed that if I miss a day, it's typically up here. It's a mindset issue. It's something's going on. Maybe I'm overwhelmed. Maybe I'm stressed. Maybe something's going on, whatever. And then I make an excuse, right, for why I don't get up and do it. And so, and like I said, I'm pretty consistent. I'm like, 5 days a week consistent, right? But there's Tuesdays. I want to be every day. But I know that you also need a rest day, right? Is that true? Do you need a rest day, or should you just keep going? And then also on top of that, what should someone do, right, when their mindset isn't right? What are some things that they can actually do to help, get them over the hump?
So first of all, routines on both of this is a big, big deal. If you're like, this is how I do my stuff, there's a lot of days where I don't want to work out. And then because it's my routine, I go home and I just don't want to do this. And I'm already in the gym, and I'm like, all right, well, I'll just do something better than nothing. And then by the end of the workout, I was like, I got to get a workout in, because it's part of my routine. The other thing about the mindset is that I always try to get people get into the routine of creating a positive mind space. When you wake up in the morning, go through your gratitudes, and 2 or 3. Don't just list them and go into them. Why are you so happy for your house? Why are you so happy for your kids? Why are you so happy for your health? Like go into it. Like actually talk to yourself about why you're so happy about this. Spend 5 minutes doing it. Same thing at night, right? And so as you go through the day, when something happens, and this is a little bit more advanced, but when something bad happens, I always try to be like, how is this my fault? How is the thing that happened that wasn't great my fault? Because I have control of me. And if this was my fault, I can fix it. And if I can fix it, well, then it's not going to be a problem in the future. And so that type of an idea of, okay, this is the part I own. This is how I'm going to fix it. Even if you hand it to somebody else and they screwed it up, did I hand it to the wrong person? Like, if you hand me a bunch of accounting stuff, I'm probably not going to do very good with it. So you don't hand me your accounting work. So if that was, you handed it to me, if you do this, that was your fault. That type of an idea. And so there's lots of little things we can get going on that one. But the thing is that whenever you don't want to work out, you have to go back to your why, right? And so one of my big whys is I want to be a great example for my kids. And so when I don't work out, I'm like, you have to go tell your kids why. Like if you put it in their head, like, you're going to have to tell them why you didn't do it. So for instance, when I did one of my first long fasts, I did a 7-day fast, and my son, my oldest, asked me, he was like, hey, I'm going to make burgers today. Do you want one? And I was like, nah, buddy, I'm fasting. And he goes, how long? And I was like, till Thursday. And he goes, wow. It was Monday. And he was like, wow. He was like, that sounds really hard. And I'm like, yeah. And he goes, but that makes sense because you like to do hard things. And I was like, that's right, buddy. And I turned and I walked to my room and I made the decision. I was like, I will die before I eat. Like I'm gonna make it all the way through this because that's my thing. Like being the example is really important for me. And so that's those things. So when you do, like, I don't want to work out today, you're like, all right, this is the example you're setting for your kids. You're like, screw it, fine, I'll go ahead and do it. That type of deal. Or, just do it for 3 more days. Like you've got 3 more days this week, knock it out this week, or that type of deal. So there's a lot of the working on yourself, and just go and get a crappy workout. Like just with something better than nothing. Like those type of things are great to kind of get you there.
So, okay, you were just talking about fasting, and you know what? I've never done that. So, but I see that that's like, they talk about all the benefits. I mean, even when you read in the Bible, it talks about the benefits of fasting, So I'm like, maybe I should try this out. How would you recommend that someone start fasting? Would you recommend that, like you said, 7 days? Whoa, that's a lot. Should I just go 1 day? Should I go 2 days? Is there like a benchmark I should reach for, or what are your thoughts?
Typically when we start walking people into that, we go over goals and stuff like that. But the easiest way to do it, so I like to get people into a fat oxidizing state first, because if you're not going to consume any food and you want your body to have energy, it's going to have to start burning your fat. So if you give yourself nothing but fat for a few days, kind of get in that keto state, that that fat oxidizing state first, then stop eating, your body's already burning fat, and so you don't have as much of that I'm hungry stuff. Plus, if you'll take a little bit of collagen, so your body has blood sugar, you're usually good to go. Like we have a lot of people, by the time we start them fasting, I go, what are you eating for breakfast? And they go, how big the deal is breakfast food? They're like, oh, I love breakfast food. I'm like, that's not what I asked you. I'm like, are you waking up hungry? People are like, not really. And I'm like, skip breakfast. Just eat lunch. And so if you skip breakfast, you have coffee or water or whatever, you take your supplements, and then you skip till lunch, you're like, well, that wasn't that hard. And I'm like, how hungry were you at lunch? And people are like, nah. I'm like, now you can try to skip lunch. And so they try to skip lunch. And so that we walk people in that way. I have a lot of guys who are just like, I just want to do it. I want to see if I can do it. Great. And so they'll do a day or 2 days, 3 days right off the bat, and we'll work with them as they go. We're like, hey man, starting to get hungry. I'm like, have a Topo Chico. That'll kind of fill your stomach up. You'll feel better. Do some gum. Like there's little tricks and tips that you can do as you go along. But the biggest thing is that the other thing I love about fasting, the reason that I do it so much. Go ahead.
I was just going to ask you, what about like, okay, so if I'm fasting, okay, and I get hungry or something like that, what if I just did like a protein shake? Is that breaking the fast? Is that technically breaking the fast or what?
So it depends on what you're consuming. So for instance, collagen is a protein, but it's not going to raise your insulin at all. And so it depends on how you view your fasting, right? So if it's like a religious thing or whatever, you're like nothing but water, then it's nothing but water. But it's not for fat loss, it's for a religious or a mindset thing, right? So you're doing it, your goals are a little bit different. So if you're like, look, I plan to lose some weight, I want to get an autophagy, I want to be healthy, you can take collagen, bring in some amino acids, doesn't change the insulin function, and so it doesn't really count. But if you were to consume a protein shake that's going to affect your insulin function, then I'm going to tell you it's going to affect it quite a bit. The easier things, that's why like bone broth or collagen is usually acceptable, because your body doesn't have to do almost anything to turn that from a protein into digested amino acids. So that's why the collagens are usually accepted, but some of the protein shakes aren't. Because a lot of the protein shakes have like a little bit of sugar or a little bit of something the body has to have to process, or a little bit of fat the body has to process, and that anytime that your body has to start digesting stuff, it breaks the fat.
Okay. Okay. I got you. So yeah, cause man, I tell you what, I've been, again, I'm in the best shape of my life. However, I still got this little stubborn, man. I got a 6-pack going, but man, I got this little stubborn. Like, I don't want to have to flex for it to pop out. Okay. Anyway, I got this little stubborn. How do I get rid of that little stubborn, man? That's just right around it's the lower abs. How do I get rid of that? Is that through fasting and stuff like that, or what?
Fasting is a great option for that.
Okay.
Again, the problem with, if you don't do fasting right, you can lose muscle tissue, and so that's a problem. That's where the collagen really helps out. But the things when we start seeing stuff like that, it's okay. Let's check the basics, right? Where's your hormone bubbles at? Where's your testosterone at? Are you holding more estrogen than you need? Because that's going to hold water and stuff like that on you. What's your digestive function? What's your probiotic function? Because a lot of times we hold fat around the belly, it's a digestive issue, and so we'll check that. But then the other thing is that what's funny is that when we start really dialing it in, we'll look at type 2 muscle fiber function. So again, and I'm not trying to get super fancy, but there's 2 types of muscles. There's the run real fast, which is a big carb fed, and then there's the slow low. So one of the reasons that building muscle tissue is the fastest way to burn fat is because, one, you're creating more mitochondria that require more fat to produce more ATP. So you have more factories building energy. We need more resources to create the energy, so you're going to burn more fat. But the other thing is that you're activating those type 2 muscle fibers. So instead of doing hard cardio where you're running real fast, you get your heart rate up real high, you slow that down and you like push a sled or you walk uphill, 3 to 4 miles an hour. You keep your heart rate in that 100 to 125. You focus on those type 2 muscle tissues, and those burn fat at a much higher rate than type 1. Type 1s usually burn carbohydrates.
Oh, I just did fat,
this. You do that.
Okay, so I have a buddy of mine, okay, that he was a little overweight, okay? And like, I remember when we were in our 20s, like, he was one of the like specimen of fitness, right? Like, this was one of those guys that would do the parkour and like jump all over the place and like backflips and all. I mean, this guy's insane, right? He was like a specimen of fitness. And then he gained a whole bunch of weight. He got married and just, right? And but then he got a divorce and was like back, mindset shift, like need to get back in shape and lose all this weight and this, that, and the other. Okay. And he is again back to it. And the other day we went and worked out at the gym, and we did this. I don't know what you call it. You push this thing, you put a bunch of weights on it and you push it. I guess he's called it a sled, something like that. You push it and then you pull it. And listen, I normally go in the gym and I'm doing, some dumbbells and free weights and this, that, and the other. I'm doing a bunch of machines and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, that freaking thing kicked my butt, man. I tell you what, I was like, oh, man. He was doing some workouts with me that was tearing me up. So you're saying that is a type 2 or something like that? What'd you say?
Yeah. So there's 2 different, like there's fast twitch, slow twitch, if people are more familiar with that. So the slow twitch stuff, like the weightlifting, the pushing, the pulling, the slow uphill type of stuff, that's doing more fat burning than it's going to be. So cardio, like doing high intensity cardio, lots of heartbeat, like the high rate, it's fantastic for the heart. It's a great way to burn off, steam, and really great for the mind. But if we're really focusing on the fat, then we dial it back a little bit, and we do the slower stuff that's more high
intense or whatever.
No, it's actually lower intensity. It's just
really?
Just longer. So yeah, because your body, so fat produces more ATP, which is actually what the body runs on, but it produces it a little bit slower and it's more efficient. And so that's the problem. And so if you eat something right now, then you're going to use carbohydrates, but the glucose is going to come in. The other thing is that when you're doing something really hard and really fast, your blood is going to lose its sugar faster. And so it's going to then have to start borrowing glucose to function, because your blood can only run on glucose, but your muscles can run on fat or on glucose. And so if you're starting to do more slow stuff where your body can maintain the supply of blood sugar to the blood, it'll stay that fat burning mode a little bit longer.
So let's talk about testosterone for a minute. Okay. At what point, I know it plays a major part for both men and women, but tell me, at what age should men be really looking at this thing? I'm 37. I did do the 10X health system, and they said that I don't need a testosterone replacement, but I could use a booster. So can you talk to me about that? Because it was a little concerning being 37. I feel that was a little early, but what is the age that people need to really start looking at their levels and things like that?
So I think you should look at your levels at all ages. Like I have a 10-year-old, an 11-year-old, and a 9-year-old, and I'm monitoring their levels. I'm not going to give them anything, but I'm monitoring their levels right now. I see a lot of 20-year-olds who are low on their testosterone. So we need to start looking at testosterone as what it is. It is a fully 100% naturally produced hormone that if you don't have enough of, you're going to have problems. It is the healing hormone. Bone density, muscle mass. I use it to treat depression all the time. It's phenomenal. We even use testosterone to treat depression since 1935. It's one of the best things to treat it outside of exercise. And the exercise helps neurologically and it creates testosterone. So, but everybody needs to get it checked. It's very, very important. We have a lot of chemicals in our water, in our air, in our food that are suppressing it. Those are called endocrine disruptors. Atrazine's in a lot of the water. It's a big one. So there's a lot of things like that. So if it's not high enough, we need to raise it up. Now, the thing is that how old are you? Like if you're like, oh, I'm 37, I've got all my kids, I've had a vasectomy, I'm not having more kids, then testosterone is a great option for you. The injectable testosterone is my favorite. We want to hold you about 1,000, make sure everything's kind of functioning through it. Women, the research shows about 150 to 250 is the best range for them. And the cool thing is that testosterone recipient specifically, is as close to the natural thing that your body produces that your body can just take it and reorganize it however it wants to. So if you start raising your testosterone, it can actually take that testosterone and convert it into estrogen. So women who have hot flashes, night sweats, vaginal dryness, they can just take testosterone and it will convert over into estrogen and it knocks out all those issues. So they take one thing and it balances everything. So that's sort of the big thing. So if we start seeing issues, I've had a lot of 30-year-old women coming after they've had kids and the whole deal, and stress is the number one thing that pushes testosterone down. High stress, low test, every time. So we start seeing that, we give these women the testosterone back, all sorts of great things happen. So their sex drive comes back, their energy comes back, they start losing fat. So here's the other thing. Testosterone increases blood flow and nerve function to the genitalia. So men, it's a fantastic for men with erectile dysfunction because it'll really help that. But it also restores blood flow to the clitoris. And so now all of a sudden these women are having stronger, better, faster, easier orgasms, which means they're enjoying their sex more and so they're wanting to do it more often, which means the guy's having his sex more often. And this is one of those mental things. So when we start talking about love languages, like if you've not read the 5 Love Languages book, phenomenal book. Everybody should read it.
Yeah,
it's really
touch.
Cool.
Okay, here's my order. I already know this one. Okay, touch, then words of affirmation, positive words of affirmation, then acts of service, quality time, and gifts is at the bottom. But that's kind of my order of the way I like to receive and the way I like to give. Is touch, words of affirmation is big for me. Love that. Acts of service, then quality time, and then gifts.
So most men, number 1 and number 2 is physical touch. Not all women are there. So what ends up happening is that the guy is having more sex. He's like, man, I feel great. I feel loved. I feel appreciated. My life is awesome. And I'm like, read the book. Because if hers is quality time, or hers is gifts, or hers is words of affirmation, and the bottom of her list is physical touch, you've got to make sure that you're telling her hair looks good. You got to make sure, get her another pair of earrings. Get her some, write her a note, stick it on the mirror. You got to feed her too. But here's the fun thing. I've had couples come in and they'll start talking about it. I'm like, that's great. And I'll tell the guy, I'm like, dude, read the book. Like, trust me, like, this is the best thing you can do. And then a month later, they come back and they're like, our marriage is in a place that we've never been at. We didn't think you could get here. And that's why I'm like, I want to focus on quality of life, because that's the biggest thing. If you go to work and you get your teeth kicked in, right? Because work is stressful, regardless. Like, I've built mine. It's something I love. I love being here. I love my job. But if you end up going to work and your work's not awesome, and then you go home and your home life sucks, you can't get away from stuff. But if you're building a marriage into a place where it's really strong and you can't wait to get home to be with your wife and be with your kids, when you leave the stress of your job, you go to a peaceful place and they can heal, regenerate, and repair. But if both of them are crazy or stressed out or not where they need to be, you're never going to get it better. And so that's why, like, trying to focus on some of the mental stuff is so important for your stress and for your quality of life. And that's why we do so much on that other side.
I love this, man. This is holistic. Okay. I love this. I mean, you're even talking about, relationships and marriage and how to keep the house a happy home, right? Because if you can't go home feeling secure and safe and a place to rest and rejuvenate and, recoup from the pressures of the world, you're just, you're burning the candle at both ends. Right. So I love what you're talking about here. I do want to kind of go back to the testosterone subject again real quick, because again, personally, for me, they told me that I don't need the replacement, which, if I'm understanding this correctly, and you could tell me if I'm right or wrong about this, the replacement is essentially like, once you start, okay, you're going to need to continue that forever, pretty much, because it will kill your body's natural ability to create it. But the booster is actually going to help your body's natural ability to create it. And so it's not something you're going to have to take forever. It's something that you just kind of get a boost and it kind of helps your body to create it. Am I understanding that correct, or am I wrong?
Well, kind of. So what ends up happening is that whatever state we're in, the diet we're in, the stress level we're in, the age we are, that's where we're at. So if you're like, okay, I'm going to add something in to increase my testosterone, whatever that thing is, whether it's a supplement, whether it's an injection, whether it's whatever it is, whenever you take that out, you're going to go back down to where you were, right? So our bodies create things out of what we give it. And so if we don't give it those things anymore, we're not going to have it. So what ends up happening is that your body regulates your testosterone level. So it's like, okay, we need to be here. And so if you add stuff in, your body goes, oh, thank God, we don't have to do that anymore. We can take those nutrients and push them somewhere else. We can do something else with these nutrients because the testosterone is where it's supposed to be. So your body just stops producing its own. If you then remove the testosterone, your body goes, oh, crap, we have to reallocate assets over here to bring those back up. So that's the get off, get on thing. Now, if you're not going to start taking the injections, you're going to start taking like encyclopene or, Clomid or one of those that helps your body create its own, HCG type of thing. Your body will create its own testosterone again, and that's awesome. The problem we get into, and this is the only caveat that I have with the pill to make you create your own testosterone, you're also going to create your own sperm again. And so what they don't tell people enough is that, hey, yeah, your testosterone is going to 800-900, but you're going to be super fertile. So if you're not married, if you don't want kids, you need to understand that, and maybe that's not the best option. And so like what a lot of guys will do, is what I did, and this is what a lot of my bodybuilders friends have done, is they'll do the testosterone, and then whenever they're like, okay, it's time their kids, that's when they take the encyclopene, that's when they take the HCG, that type of thing. And I've got buddies who've been pro bodybuilders for years, 10, 20 years, lots and lots and lots of testosterone use. And it's like, oh, I got married, or oh, my wife wants kids. Well, they got a new wife and they want kids. And they're cool. And so they'll jump on H&B and HCG and that type of stuff. And then, 6-8 weeks later, they had kids. And so you can turn it back and forth pretty easily. Now, there is a chance that you're not going to get it back, but it's not really big. So that's the big thing with it. Now, what I've personally seen, and we've tried lots of stuff. If you strip out, if you really detox the body and you get the body full of nutrients and you really work on the stress and you pull all the heavy metals out and you give the body, the stuff it needs, it can make some more testosterone. But if you're at 200 or 300 right now, I would just tell you, or even 400, replace your testosterone, push it back up to 1,000, then fix everything, because testosterone is the healing hormone. Like I can't fix ulcerative colitis. Celiac we can still fix without it, but ulcerative colitis we can't. I've not had good results fixing MS or dementia without it. So it's really, really important to have. So if it's in that 300-400 range, kick it back up to 1,000. If it's at 600-700, 550, 600, take some supplementation, work on your stress a little bit, and see if you can bubble back up. But the other thing is that I always ask people, how do you feel? People are like 500-600, they're like, I'm tired, I'm sore when I work out, my sex drive's kind of meh. These are guys, and they're like, and I'm like, how much drive do you have to go to the gym? How much drive do you have to get out and do stuff? They're like, none. That's actually the definition of depression. Like, hey, you want to go play basketball? You're like, not really. You want to go see a movie? Not really. Like, you just don't want to do anything. You don't have the energy. You just don't have the drive. You just don't want to do anything. That's actually the depression we're talking about. And what happens is people go, well, that's not me. They're like, all right, cool. We pull their blood. They're like at 300 or 400. We give them the testosterone. And then like a month later, they come back and they're like, hey, I've got all this energy now. I think I'm going to start going to the gym. Like, we'll talk about that exercise thing you talked about earlier. You're like, okay. Yeah, like you weren't depressed. Yeah. But we give you the testosterone. Now you have the energy to do stuff. And now now you're motivated to go to the gym and take a secondary piece. And that's always what I talk about with patients. They're like, look, I want you to have so much ROI, the return on investment from the thing you did, that you come back to me, you're like, I want to do more. So I always tell people, if you give me $10, I give you 20. You give me 50, I give you 100. You give me 1,000, I give you 10,000. You're going to get all your money because the return on investment is so good. Well, if you come in, you're like, I just want you to do a little bit. Take the testosterone, change your diet like this, and just do that. And then a month later, you're like, I've lost weight, I have more energy, my sex drive's up, my mental clarity's up. Then you come back and you're like, what else can we do? Well, here's how we start exercising. And what people always do is they come in like, I don't need arms as big as yours. I don't need a six pack. I don't need this or that. I just want more energy. And then about 2 months in, they come in and go, all right, I know I said I didn't need bigger arms. But if I wanted bigger arms, what's the path? And that's my favorite time. So I'm like, you're getting return on investment. You're willing to invest more in your health because you're starting to see results. And that's always really fun. I'm like, welcome to a health journey.
Yeah, that's 100%. Like I said, when I started a little over a year ago, right? And it's progressively getting where I want more and more and more and more. And I'm taking it more and more seriously and like looking at these things and really kind of like, I'm curious about all this stuff. Like this is a genuine conversation that I'm curious about. And I look at it as like a lot of it's over my head. Right. And so that's why I appreciate people like you who like just, this is your life's work. And for me, it's like, it's hard for me to understand all this stuff. I feel like a science project. I really don't know what's working, what's not working. I guess that's probably where consistent testing and stuff like that comes into play, right? How often do you think people should get, blood work done and things like that? Like, how often would you recommend somebody get, checked out and make sure their levels are all where they need to be and all that good stuff?
So a lot of times it's based on goals, right? So, and if you're on testosterone and you're doing, supplementation, you're working on it, every 3 to 5 months, we like to do it for a couple of different reasons. One, when you're on testosterone, one of the only things that is actually medically problematic is that you can increase what's called the hemoglobin and the hepatic rate, which is actually good to a certain point because that's how your body carries oxygen. But as that gets higher and higher, your blood gets thicker and thicker. And so it puts more pressure on the heart and the blood vessel. Not a big deal. If we catch it, we're like, oh, hey, you've had this for a month. Go donate blood. You'll save 3 lives and you'll be better. Like that type of thing. So there is some monitoring for that. And then we do Eastern medicine muscle testing as well. So I do a lot of Western medicine. I do a lot of Eastern medicine. I do a lot of mental stuff. That's how we put everything together. And so I like to muscle test at the beginning, twice a month for, 2 or 3 months. And then we can start spreading that out when we get to maintenance. But the thing is that what I like to do is I like to teach people, this is how you self-check. Are you feeling like this? Are you feeling like this? Like when you do your coffee enema, do you feel any anxiety? If you do, we need to start stripping out the stuff in your kidneys. Have you done a heavy metal detox recently? So there's just little things that we do. And if sitting here talking about it, you're like, oh my God, this is so overwhelming. But when you start working with the team and you start talking to people, this is the thing I love. Like when we start, the idea is we put people in the community and everybody starts talking about it. And someone goes, oh, I did my coffee enema yesterday. And someone like you goes, wait, you did what now? And so we start talking about like, here's what's up, here's what's down. And we have questions. We have people that we have there that can answer the question. And so it's one of those things where people are going to come in and ask questions we've never heard of. Like somebody asked me questions about a supplement that I'd never heard of, and I had to look it up. But when I looked it up, I was like, well, here's the upsides and downsides to it. it doesn't fit your goals for these reasons. And so I would do this thing over here. And they're like, oh, that's so beneficial. But there's so much information coming in from on the internet and stuff like that. We need a way to filter it. And that's kind of what I kind of do as well, is like, look, you don't need the IV stem cell for this thing, but for this reason, it'd be great. And so, that's kind of, that we kind of help out in that manner. So that's the big thing with the community.
Yeah. Yeah. There's so much information. It's hard. I mean, it kind of like, this is like it's like a chemistry project or something. I like look at it like putting the chemicals in your pool, right? You gotta balance it all out and all this kind of this, that, and the other. And it's like, man, I mean, you could look at the water and it looks clear, but that doesn't mean that it's actually, good for you. Yeah, it doesn't mean it's clean.
And that's kind of what I tell them, like, health is good chemicals in versus bad chemicals out. Like that's where it is. If we can detox the stuff, we help the body detox, we help the body absorb, you're going to be a lot better off. And there's, once the body gets set, then we can work on the mind. But that's all what it is. It's getting those chemicals where they're supposed to be. And so it's how do we set those up for your goals? And what's the best way for you to get to bed? And the other problem is that, so if people are wondering like why there's no diet for individuals, look up somatotyping. So somatotyping talks about, there's like 3 basic sets for people. The ectomorph, which is the guy who can never gain weight, like your buddy who eats 4 pizzas and 2 cases of beer and doesn't gain an ounce. Yeah. And then we got the guys who, like, they're like, oh, I've gained 10 pounds. I'll just cut back a little bit. And they lose it. Those are your mesomorphs. Those are the guys who the calories in, calories out model works really well for. And then you have guys on the other end of the spectrum where I live, called the endomorphs, where if I watch you eat a donut, I get fat. Because I'm so sensitive to insulin. So these are the guys where, like, they did the keto diet and they lose 100 pounds in 6 months. And it's like, it was amazing. And then the guy over here is like, I can't gain weight. And then the guy in the middle, he can do whatever he wants to. So, and when we talk about chemistry, this is one of the things that got me all wild up was, I don't like the calories in, calories out model. It works great for the mesomorphs. Fantastic for about 34% of the population. However, if you're going to tell me 10 grams of sugar, 10 grams of insoluble fiber, and 10 grams of protein work the same way in the body, which is what the calories in, calories out model says, I'm going to have problems with that from a chemistry standpoint.
Look, and let me tell you something. I don't want to count all of that stuff. I see people, they got these apps and they're counting their calories and they're putting in all this and that and the other. And like, yeah, I ate this and I ate this portion of that and bop, bop, bop. And that's like, man, you know what? To me, I don't want to think about all that stuff. I really just want something that's simple that I can do. That's why I do like the factor thing, because I know, hey, this thing is portioned. Right. I know I'm not going to overeat, and it's like healthy foods, so I don't want to have to like count my calories and all that kind of stuff. Like, you know what I mean? I just want something simple, easy, and that I know is going to work. And so far it's been working very well.
And like a lot of those are fantastic. And it's funny because like, you don't have to, you can get in it however, wherever you want. But it's funny because like, I have friends of mine who know every stat from the Dallas Cowboys, the yards rush, the whole deal, all the way back. And that's their thing. And they're like, and I don't care at all. I have friends who are pro athletes and I don't keep track of the stats. Like, I don't care. But as you start doing it more, it's just like, I know people who know every stat on every Ferrari there is because they're car freaks, right? So as you start getting into things, you start doing it a little bit more. And there's people I see like you all the time. We're like, I'm never going to count this stuff. I'm like, all right, that's fine. And then like 3-4 months later, they start, leaning out and everything starts working. And they're like, so I had 26 grams of carbs and 18 grams of it. And I'm like, I thought you weren't going to track this. They're like, well,
me, man.
I started because, and
nope.
It's
not
just,
me.
Where
not
are
me.
You on the journey? Like, if you don't want to count them, go.
No,
that's fine.
It's just not me, man. I am like, I don't want to think, especially not about food. Ugh, think about food. That's why, like, when it comes to, you always see that little, memes and little clips about the man asking the woman, where she wants to eat. And she's like, I don't care. And then he's like, okay, Taco Bell. And she's like, no, well, this, no. And then, that whole thing where they go back and forth, right? I literally don't care. I'm a foodie. I love all food equal. I will eat anything, literally. I'm not picky. I don't care. I don't want to think about it. So like when I say, like, if we have that discussion, Where do you want to eat? I don't care. I literally don't. Let's go anywhere. And I will find something that I can eat. And because I don't want to have to think about it. I just don't. I'm like that guy. I don't want to think about it. Just put food in front of me so I can eat it. And that's why this factor thing to me works well. But maybe I should be putting it on like a plate or something and not microwaving
If
it.
they'll put video on, and there's always a little thing you can do a little bit extra. But I always tell people, like, get in the general direction, and then as you feel you want to, we can start narrowing it down. Because the problem is that if you're like, give me all the things, like you're at a 2. If you ask for a level 10 work, it's gonna overwhelm you. Like, just walk you through. It's little changes at a time, because this isn't a 6-week thing. We're trying to change your body for the rest of your life. We're trying to change the quality of your life forever. And so add some stuff in next week. Like, you don't have to boil the whole ocean today.
Yeah, I look at like, okay, so if I was you see a lot of like celebrities and athletes and whatever, they have, personal chefs or whatever that are doing their nutrition and their diet, and they're not even having to, like, they don't think. They put food in front of them. Hey, this is what you're going to eat today. Especially with athletes, you see that a lot with athletes. It's like they tell them what they're going to eat. I need that. That's what I need. Just tell me what I'm going to eat. I don't want to think about it. Just put it in front of me and let me eat it. You know what I mean?
Well, it's fun because, like, I have several patients who have their own chefs. And so, like, I'll be like, just let me talk to your chef. And so the chef and I will talk for about 20, 30 minutes. And then I'll talk to the patient, a couple days later. And they're like, man, this food's amazing. I'm like, I didn't know I got pizza. And I'm like, well, I had to import the flour from Italy so that it doesn't have glyphosate. And it's sourdough, so it has a very low glycemic function. They're like, oh, all right. Like, I didn't know any of that. I'm like, you don't need to know that. Your chef and I know that. So you just need the food.
That's right. I don't need to know. I just want to eat. That's it. I'm a foodie like that. I'm not a chef. I'm not like, my brother is a chef, actually. My brother is a really, really good chef. And people always ask me, because I'm a big foodie, they're like, you don't like to cook? I'm like, heck no, I don't like to cook. I am not a cook. I want to eat. I don't want to cook. I want to eat. Okay. So just put it in front of me and let me eat it. Hey, real quick though, I want to dive into something else that I thought was very interesting here. So you have a charity, Tree of Life. It focuses on using ketamine and psychedelics to treat PTSD and addiction in veterans and first responders. Tell me more about this initiative. That sounds, just tell me more about that. Sounds super interesting.
So it's kind of a funny story. So I I did a TED talk on replacing opioids with cannabis because it works really well. We use it in the office. And afterwards, my business partner was like, hey, man, you figured out this pain thing. If you can figure out addiction, he's like, you got this opioid problem solved. And so I started doing research on figuring out how to fix addiction. And I found out we've known since the 60s that psychedelics like, ketamine and psilocybin, like magic mushrooms, and LSD to a degree, has been phenomenal. DMT, so ayahuasca, 85% of the time it fixes addiction, PTSD, and depression. And I'm like, how are we not using this on everybody? And so I started talking to my veteran buddies who've done ketamine, and they're like, oh, it saved my life. And I talked to these veterans who are like, I know what my guns taste like because they've all been in my mouth. And like, that's how bad they were. And when they did ketamine, and 6 weeks later, 5 weeks later, it's gone. Not like, oh, I'm treating it, but if I don't do this again, it comes back, like with a pill. No, it's gone. It just changes the way the brain functions. And when I started finding that out, I was like, why are we not using this on everybody? It's not that expensive, and we can fix this stuff. So that's what the charity came out with. And so what I decided to do was, look, any of the supplements on the Pillars of Wellness website, all that money is going to go to the charity. If you guys want to donate to the charity, great. We're going to take that money, we're going to break the PTSD, the addiction, the depression of these first responders and these veterans, so that we can actually fix the mental health problem, not just talk about it.
So, okay, I'm just going to be real with you. So when I hear these words, ketamine and psychedelics and all of this kind of stuff, like, I go back to my teenage years when I was running amok, doing craziness. And I have done ketamine and I've done psychedelics and LSD and all that crazy stuff when I was a teenager, okay? Getting high. And anyways, ketamine, I have a unique story about that. I remember I was a teenager and I took some ketamine, and which is cat tranquilizer, right? And I remember they call it Special K, right? We did that Special K, and I thought I was a clock. I literally thought I was a clock on the wall, like weighing back and forth. And I could hear tick, tock, tick, tock. I thought I was a clock. Okay. This stuff is powerful stuff, man. Like, I you know, talk to me, man. Cause I quit that life long time ago. Okay. I quit that life long time ago, but you're saying this stuff helps with addiction and helps break other habits. Do people not get addicted to this stuff?
It's possible. So you can get addicted to anything. Like you can get addicted to eating toilet paper. Like it's like anything you can imagine you can get addicted to. So it is possible. But what ends up happening is that the way you do this, so that just doing the drug can help. Like I've talked to veterans who are like, I went out with some friends and did some mushrooms. When I came back, my PTSD was a lot better. And it's the same type of thing that happened with me. But what we want to do is we want to put the mind in the right place. Because when we're looking at psychedelics, so the word psychedelic means the psyche or your soul, and delios is to shine light. So put light on your soul, so like you can actually see what's going on. So like Carl Jung talks about the 3 layers of consciousness, the one we're using right now to talk, your subconscious, and the universal subconscious. And so psychedelics kind of help break into the subconscious and the universal subconscious, so you can actually work on your problems and fix them. So what we do is we bring people in and we do mind work ahead of time, what's called the setting, and intention. Why are we doing this? Are you in a comfortable place? Are you ready to do this? And so like, well, let's get you ready to go mentally. And then you take the medications. And what ends up happening is that your body now starts dealing with some of these things that it hadn't dealt with before.
So that's interesting. A lot of that sounds like intention, right? Like when I was a teenager, my intention wasn't to like be healed and like, you know, elevate my mind. It was like my intention was to get high, right? And doing that stuff. And so it sounds like a little bit of that is an intentional thing. Like what are you doing it for?
Well, and that's a big part. So like if you look at like the DMT, like people just do it for fun versus you're going to go through with like an actual shaman and they kind of walk you through why you're doing it and how you're connecting to the universal intelligence and the whole thing. It's a lot different. I've had a lot of my high-end guys, you know, CEOs of big companies, things like that, when they've done the ayahuasca stuff, kind of like, Aaron Rodgers talks about it. What ends up happening is that, and it's weird, I can't really describe it, but the things that are holding you back from being the person you need to be, from being your purpose, from dedicating your life to your purpose, releases. And it kind of just a little bit. And so you can see the path better. And you're like, this is the things I need to do to make myself better. One of the guys who did them, he came back in and he told me, he goes, all the things I thought were important in my life, he's like, I don't care about it all. He's like, the things I've always known were important, but we're putting a lot of emphasis on, that's all I can see now. But I can see how to make them all better. Like it's a laser focus. Like everything works now. Like it just all makes sense. And that's what happened with me. And so like my big ketamine story was, before we started the charity, before we did anything, I was like, I'm going to do ketamine because I want to see how it feels, because I'm not going to tell somebody to do something I'm not willing to do. I don't feel like that has an integrity with it. And so part of the story is that, so I figured out how to fix COVID about 4 months in. And so we were pulling people out of hospitals to fix them, but I got a lot of COVID. And so my heart got messed up. And so when I would lay down for about a year and a half, my heart would beat way too hard. And I had looked at, nobody could figure it out. And then on top of that, my heart rate for the last 20 years has been in the 90s because apparently I had some PTSD from a car wreck when I was in high school. And so those two things just happened to be there. So, and when I went in to do my ketamine, the doctor was like, what's wrong with you? I was like, nothing. I love my life. And he was like, well, we can't do this unless there's something wrong with you. And I'm like, anxiety. I was like, I have stress. He's like, all right. So I do it. And it's funny because my story is hilarious because like, everyone's like, you're going to get high, you're going to enjoy it. I'm like, yeah, that sounds great. I hated it. Like I get done and I'm sick as a dog. I feel like I have the flu. I'm throwing up. It's horrible. I get home and I lay down in bed, and that was the first time in 18 months when I would lay down, I couldn't feel my heart beating anymore. It would beat way too hard when I would lay down. I was like, oh, that's cool. I'd check my pulse ox in the morning. My heart rate was in the 60s for the first time in 20 years. So what happened was that it fixed the sympathetic escape that my brain is holding over my body. And so it allowed my heart rate to calm down and allowed a lot of things that my body was just buzzing and pushed on to relax and calm down, because it changed the way we call the default neural state. It changed that in my head because of the way it lifted all the neurotransmitters up, and it had them kind of resettle and kind of reset. And so it helps my heart. It helps my sympathetic nervous system a lot. And we've been doing it with people. Like I've had people come in and be like, women, like not they weren't soldiers, they weren't getting shot at, they weren't seeing dead bodies, but they just, they had moms who weren't awesome, they had husbands who weren't awesome, they had bills to pay, they had life that kicked them in the teeth,
We
and
all
so
have
they went,
traumas, we
yeah,
all have traumas, that we go through in life. So one question I wanted to ask you on this was, it sounds like, and I could be totally wrong about this, but you're saying that like you went in to get prescribed this essentially. Like I thought this stuff was all like ketamine was like illegal, like it was cat tranquilizer, special K, right? Like this was a drug.
it's actually
Is
it's the number one drug we use for pediatric surgery.
oh
It is
really?
anesthetic. Oh, it's fantastic.
Oh,
It's a
okay.
fantastic
I don't
med.
even know. Okay,
Yeah,
and then the psychedelics, like I'm starting to see some stuff like that where, I mean, a lot of this stuff, it's interesting because, even when you're talking about marijuana and you're talking about all these things, like a lot of it's, I guess, starting to become more legalized and people are starting to find the medical treatments, the actual positive things to all of these different things, like what are the positive, obviously anything you do too much can be, you can abuse anything, right? So, um, if you take too many aspirins, it'll be your last headache, right? So, um, but yeah, I just think it's interesting. I mean, I remember growing up doing some of these things. And again, uh, that was not probably the most proud time of my life doing some of these things. But, and then I even remember like when I did, I was 13, I'd done like ecstasy. Okay. And I remember felt great. And then the next day I was actually super depressed. It like killed all of my drive. It was not this enlightening experience. It was a enlightening in the moment. But then the next day it was like I was completely drained of any positive anything. It was just like depression.
well, so here's one of the things. We do things without supervision. We're going to take way too much or not enough. And we're not going to get the back end care. Like, so for a lot of this stuff, when people are going to do the ketamine and stuff like this, I'm like, look, we're going to build your body up so it's ready. And then I'm going to give you a bunch of nutrients the day before and a bunch of nutrients the day afterwards. Because yeah, we're going to burn through some stuff. And we need to replenish those. It's like running a marathon. Drink your water, take your electrolytes, you can run further. So if you're going to push your body, push your mind, we've got to set everything up. And the other thing with like cannabis, cannabis is fantastic. It's really good for anxiety. And we were like, that can't be true because it gives me, really bad paranoia. Because the difference is that at like 10 units, your anxiety goes away. At 50, you start getting paranoia. When you smoke, you get 200. So it's the dose that you're using that's problematic. And if you don't dose it properly, if you don't use it properly, you're not going to get the results that you really want. And so that's where a lot of this plays in. Is, how much did you take? How did you take it? The other thing is that, like, when we do ketamine, especially the first time, I always tell people you need to do it under medical supervision. The reason for that, it can make your heart rate come up, it can make your blood pressure come up. We've got to monitor those things to make sure it's safe. But again, doing something for fun and doing something right in a clinical manner is not nearly the same thing.
Absolutely. I agree with you 100% on that. Like 100% of what you just said. Again, I was doing all these stupid things as a kid, just for a different purpose too, not to, uh, be in better, mind health, nothing like that. It was all about just getting messed up and having a fun time. And, so I don't recommend that for anybody. So if you're listening to this podcast right now, I'm not saying go out there and do a bunch of drugs. I gave up all that stuff when I was 16, actually. Even pot. I used to smoke a lot of pot, and was super grateful that I got to transform my life. I moved in with my father, and my father got a hold of me and showed me some discipline and all that good stuff. So I was able to turn my life around because I was getting in a lot of mess very, very early on in my life. So I'm grateful for that. But I do see that a lot of these things do have medical purposes, and under the right guidance and under the right medical professional, helping you through it. I mean, I could see where it could break some addictions and things like that. I mean, I love this conversation actually, because I think it's super interesting.
Well, I think the more you hear about it, can start looking for it, maybe find it near them. And so it'll save some lives. This conversation could easily save some lives. Because if someone's really depressed, and they're like, you know what, I'm going to look into that. And it helps them get where they need to go. We might never know, but it could save somebody's life.
Yeah. And you know what? I mean, if I had to say, like, would I rather, like some of the depression medication that I think is out there. Okay. Again, now I'm not a medical professional, so seek your own counsel, seek your own guidance. But I personally feel like a lot of this anxiety medication, depression medication, I feel like it makes it worse with a lot of people. And I've seen it in some of my friends where they're now dependent on these medications, and they're causing other issues because they're taking all these medications their whole life, and then they got to take it one to another to another to another. And you know, what if something like this, a treatment like this, could help get them off of some of that stuff, some of those other medications? So have you seen anything like that? Do you have any good success stories where someone has taken a psychedelic and now all of a sudden they don't need their anxiety medication anymore?
Yeah, no, we see that a lot. Like we see it where, where something gets fixed. The other thing you see is like, I'll raise people's testosterone up and fix their gut, and they don't need their anxiety meds or depression meds, because again, remember, the vast majority of your serotonin is made in your gut. If your gut's all messed up, no probiotics, high yeast, parasites, you're not going to make enough serotonin to produce for your brain. And so instead of thinking SSRI, which is trying to increase the amount of serotonin in your brain, make more in your gut. Like there's lots of things we can do as far as that goes. But yeah, when you start breaking habits in the brain, you start repassing it, and your body has to find new pathways to go through. That helps a lot. So one of the analogies we'll use, I love this one, is you have a house on a hill, the general source below you, and it snows. And so as you walk back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, you make this rut, right? So it's the rut that you walk in. Well, if it comes in and it snows really heavily and it covers up that rut, you now have to make a new path. And so that's kind of what happens with the brain. So what happens is that you lift all the neurotransmitters, kind of shake it off, let it come back down, and your body goes, oh, well, now I can go this way or this way, like, because I don't have the old pathway. And so it helps in that manner a lot as well. And so it's just your body just starts finding new ways of thinking about things, if that makes sense.
It definitely does. Yeah, it definitely does. I mean, would you say that this is more of a, like you said, there are some other things like gut issues and things that you could repair first, that would this be a last type of resort thing that you would do to help somebody? Or would you, like, I mean, at what point does someone say this makes sense to do, some of these different types of drugs?
So the severity comes in. So if you come in and you're like, because everybody else, everybody has issues. You, me, your mom, your best friend, everybody has mental stuff we need to work on. So that's put that out. However, if you come in and you're like, I can't, like, it's hard to get through the day. Like it's really bothering me. All right, we're going to start with the mind. Then we're going to go back to the body. We're going to come back to the mind, but we got to knock out some of this trash up front. Like if you're just freaking out and you're like, I can't get over this, I have massive anxiety. Like if you come in and you're one of the veterans, one of the first responders, and you're like, I'm angry all the time. Everything sets me off. I shouldn't. I feel like I'm in, like, like I'm a long-tailed cat in a room full of rocking chairs. Like that idea, that stress, like something's about to happen all the time. I'm always on. We need to break that down first. All right, so we might run you through ketamine first, and then bring everything else back in, or we might, run through psilocybin first, wherever is easiest and best for you. We'll run through psilocybin first, like a microdose, to kind of get that thing regulated so that you're good, and we do everything else. It's kind of like the same way we do blood pressure. If you have high blood pressure, we're going to medicate it, then we're going to fix the problem, and then we decrease the need for the drug. That's the way we do a lot of this stuff.
This makes so much sense to me when I'm hearing you say it, because, like, I don't really have a whole lot of those types of issues, right? But it makes me I feel empathy for those that, man, they've got some real heavy stuff happening in the mind, right? And it's for those that don't have anything like that going on in your mind like that, it's almost hard to understand it, that somebody could. It's almost like, dude, just go work out, you know, like go blow some steam off, you know, like go outside, like, you know. But it could be a lot more than that, right? Like I was talking to somebody recently, and he said that he had, you know, he was prescribed that he had ADHD, and I'm like, I do too. What you talking about? Everybody got that pretty much, right? Like that, they're handing that out like participation trophies these days. But I'm like, but then he started telling me that it was like a severe case, and that he was like hearing like voices and stuff like that. Like, you know, I'm like, whoa, this is something completely different than what I'm like, you know, what I experienced. So I understand that there are like severe cases of mental disorders and different things that are going on. And so, yeah, that something like this, if it can help someone, maybe if they're, I mean, have you ever met someone that was suicidal that came into you, that just was like extremely depressed, suicidal, and you were able to prescribe something like this that was able to kind of open them up, or you know, tell me about
Yeah,
that.
we've had several guys, like I said, we some veterans who are like, and I'm like, how bad is it? And they go, I know what my guns taste like. They've
Mm,
like
mm.
I've had guys who are like, who've told me stories that would just like it still makes the hair on my arm stand up. They tell me
You just
actual
said that,
stories.
like, yeah, that. Oh my God, when you
But they're
said that.
like I was sitting there and I'm coming up with reasons not to.
Mm.
Like it's gotten to the point where they're like, okay, convince yourself not to pull the trigger, and they have to. And I'm like, how often? They're like, more than once. And then they go through this treatment, and they're like, it's so much better. Now, here's the deal: is it possible for it to take it from 10 to a 0, completely eradicate it? Yes, that happens. Most of the time, what happens is because you're still gonna have crap itch in the face. So it goes from a 10 to like a 2 or a 3. But if you were struggling and you were like dealing with the 10 and you go to a 2 or a 3, you feel like it's all the way gone. And so that's the thing. It's like if you have 1,000 pounds on you, someone takes off 600 of it, you still have a lot of weight on you, but it's a whole lot less weight, right? It's a whole lot easier to manage and deal with. So that's where we see a lot of this.
I mean, this seriously, I could talk about this stuff all day. Literally, I really could talk about this all day. Again, I want to make sure everybody understands the content discussed in this podcast is for informational purposes only. It's not intended to be a substitute for professional advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek advice of your physician or other qualified health professionals with any questions that may regard your medical condition. The opinions expressed are not necessarily the views of the host or the podcast. That's my disclaimer for everyone here listening. Seek your own counsel, seek your own guidance.
Yes.
And go
Especially
talk
everyone's body's different.
Yeah, everybody's different, right? I
Yeah.
mean, God created us unique, okay? Uniquely made. And so you there is no cookie cutter. Okay, there is no cookie cutter. I don't believe in the cookie. Now, there's best practices. Okay, best practices, but I don't think there's, you know, and that's why this stuff's so complicated. That's why we need people like Dr. Chalmers here to help us figure it all out. So you have absolutely shared a wealth of knowledge with us today. I really appreciate you being on the show. Is there anything else that you want to leave the audience with? You know, any last words that you want to share with them?
So the biggest thing, like, you know, the most important thing you can do, and it's really hard, is to find what your purpose is. And I feel like my purpose is to, because I have all this information, and it bothers me that I can't give it to everybody. Like, if this is going to help, like the ketamine thing, like, right? Because like no one knows. So I feel like I know, and it's my job to make sure other people know. So like that's why, like, you know, my job is to give you options. So you know, the big thing is, you know, if I can, you know, when people follow me on Facebook, if they follow me on Twitter specifically, like I told you earlier, I've gotten, because I've disagreed with the CDC more than once. YouTube has told me they're going to ban me off of YouTube. So, but you know, just being able to get out in front of people and get the information out is really kind of one of the big things. And again, we've talked about so much, you know, going into depth, we didn't get, you know, there's a lot more depth, but we talked about so many things, you're going to forget some of that stuff. So, you know, making sure that we give people access to the information is a big thing for me.
That I do believe is important, regardless of whether you align with it or not. Like some of the stuff we were talking about just a minute ago, may be controversial for some people, right? Using, you know, psychedelics or whatever. Okay, whatever. So, like, you know, being able to, like, I'm not for the cancel culture stuff, man. I'm for information, and again, do what you want with that information. That's up to you, right? You can look at it and you can say, hey, but to stop people from talking, right? I'm not for that. I'm not for banning and all of that stuff. And so, yeah, y'all need to go follow him, and you know what? Ask questions, be curious. What's wrong with being curious and asking questions? You can formulate your own opinion, right? Like, formulate your own opinions, guys, but ask questions, be curious, be open. That's one of the things is I'm not for closed-mindedness, right? Be open-minded, ask questions, be curious, and formulate your own opinions. There's nothing wrong with that.
And the big thing is that any topic in the world that can't stand up to questions needs to be questioned, because that's the thing. Like, be like, hey, explain this to me, why you did this. Well, this is what my thinking is. And if people look at it and they go, all right, I get that. Okay. But here's the other thing. One of the things I have, the biggest problem I have with cancer culture is that it doesn't allow people to grow. Because what we should do is we should be like, I have this amount of information and I've made this decision. And then as you get older, you get new information. And then you go back to that original thought and you go, I'm going to change this because I have new information. And so it moves your position. Anybody who feels the same way today they did 5 years ago is not somebody I want to talk to, because they don't bring in any information and they don't change their viewpoint.
And they're not growing. I don't think the same way I did when I was, 13 years old, back when I was doing all the craziness. I don't think the same way, right? But if I did, right, if I'd never changed and I stuck to those positions I had, I remember arguing with my dad at the kitchen table, going back and forth about why I should be smoking weed, and like, we would debate things, but that was my mindset back then. I've changed, I've grown, I've adapted, I've matured, and my thoughts are not the same as they were before. And so I agree with what you're saying. And the other thing too is, by being open-minded and like it's going to do one of two things, whether you agree with it or not, right? When you hear something, it's either going to strengthen your current position, right? When you hear something, you're like, okay, I heard him out, but no, now I'm even more firm in my current position. Or it's going to help you to, again, adapt and maybe question your own thoughts. Like, wait a minute, that is interesting. I never thought of it that way. But you can't do that if you don't have empathy. And empathy is simply being able to put yourself in the other person's shoes, being open to putting yourself where they are. And so if you don't have that, you can't be open. You can't be open-minded, right? And I think that's the issue with this cancel culture stuff that we have. These people don't have any empathy. They're not able to put themselves in the other person's shoes. Literally, they're not able to. They're like, nope, it's my way or the highway. This is it.
Well, I think there's a lot of that, but I also think there's a lot of underlying trying to drive narratives so they can specifically drive culture to a specific point. That's the thing that scares me, because like when the mob hits a group of people, it's not a person. It's just everyone's like, oh, this is terrible now, and everyone decides it's terrible. It's like, why did we decide that? Like, that type of thing. It's like, what, some people are saying wrong things and they need to be brought down. The Harvey Weinstein thing needed to happen 100%. We needed to talk about that one. But there's other things that are happening, like with, hey, I think this way on medical. I'm like, no, we're going to ban you from talking. Why can't that person talk? Like, what? Like, we should bring some of these things out, and we should like discuss them, not just, allow the mob to say no.
Yeah, I agree with that. Straight up. You know what I'm saying? Like, so that, yeah, I want to hear, especially when it comes to health, like, I'd like to hear different perspectives so that I can formulate my own opinion and make a decision, right? It's that whole saying, go get a second opinion. Why would you get a second opinion if this is the only one that is true, right? Like, if this is the only truth,
the only path.
Yeah, the only path. No, go get a second opinion. Go get a third opinion. Shoot, and then formulate your own opinion based off of the information, right?
Well, we're having people go out for surgical consult to like talk to 3 people, and if 2 guys agree, do that thing.
Yeah.
Like, if you're trying to figure it out, like that's the easiest way to do it. Like, talk to 3 or 4 experts, get the consensus of the experts, and go that route.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, come on. Anyway, so I'm all for it, man. Make sure you guys follow Dr. Chalmers. Make sure you connect with him, and that way he can get his message out there if they're trying to shut down his YouTube channel and stuff like that. That's bogus. All right, man. We'll try to get that word spread out there, man, so you can help some more people. I appreciate you being on the show. Thank you so much. And guys, that's the show. It's all about who ya know. Bye. Thanks for listening to the Who You Know Show podcast. My name is Trevor Houston, and if you've enjoyed this episode, consider subscribing wherever you listen and leave us a positive review to help us keep the mics on in the studio. Until next week, that's the show. It's all about who you know.